Past the escalator to nowhere and over the toxic smoke of the burning tire yard, and you'll find the town of Springfield. And sure, Newsweek calls it America's crud bucket, it suffers from constant nuclear meltdowns and has a funky smell that just won't quit, but gosh darn it, it's still better than Shelbyville.
Oh my gosh, look! The fire hydrants here are yellow!
Just be sure to steer clear from its bottomless pits and the mystery spot. So let's come together to celebrate the armpit of America's butt crack, for this is the complete history of Springfield. But before we take our tour, quickly write down below the first place you'd visit in Springfield if you ever went there. Springfield's rich history dates all the way back to frontier times, when a band of pioneers left Maryland after misinterpreting a passage from the Bible, and amongst them was future American hero Jebediah Springfield.
A noble spirit embiggens the smallest man.
But perhaps I should address the nasty rumours that speculate that Honest Jeb was nothing more than a murderous pirate called Hans Springfield, who once even tried to kill George Washington. But to that, I say poppycock. And what's that? A silver prosthetic tongue? Absolutely preposterous. I mean, come on, his skeleton was exhumed and no such scandalous evidence was ever found. But saying that, any historical records of Jebediah's early life are scarce to say at best. But even still, the myth of Jebediah is bigger than any one man, known to bring people together from all walks of life. And to that, I say long live Jebediah. Anyway, when the pioneer arrived at his destination, Jebediah was finally able to make his dream of a noble, righteous, and lovely town come true. No thanks to his sleazy partner, Shelbyville, Manhattan, who basically wants to make a town to legalize marrying his cousin. But you see, Jebediah's interests were far more virtuous than marrying your uncle's kids, and so he split from Shelbyville, and even though Shelbyville took half their followers, formed his own crummy town, and sparked an undying rivalry, Springfield was now free to thrive with pride, even marking their founding with planting a lemon tree. Jebediah went on to some truly heroic acts, like building the town's first ever hospital out of mud and logs, which also went on to save the entire population from the Great Blizzard of '48. And if that didn't make him a great patriot, well, he also wrestled a bear. This brave act was immortalized in a bronze statue that now stands in front of City Hall. And sure, historians now claim that the bear probably killed him, but that just sounds like Shelbyville talk to me. I mean, just take a look at their statue. Tacky! So, to this day, the two towns are bitter enemies, and although neither would admit it, Springfield and Shelbyville are pretty similar. So, to talk about Springfield's incestuous neighbour, I asked my friend the Real Jims to help me out, as he's just released his very own video about Shelbyville over on his channel. So bake 'em away, Jims.
Ah, Shelbyville, that bizarre world Springfield. You've heard about its founding and its cousin-related philosophical differences, but in actuality, it is more like Springfield than either city would like to admit. Springfield has the Quickie Mart, they have the Speedy Mart. Springfield has Moe's, they have Joe's. Instead of Duff, they drink Fudd. And instead of turning lemons into lemonade, well, Shelbyville has turnips. Yeah, I can see why they stole their lemon tree. Shelbyville largely exists as a rival for our favorite Springfield characters, especially when it comes to sports. Homer's dancing helps the Isotopes defeat the Shelbyville Shelbyvillians. Homer's ability to get hit by a ball helps defeat them for the softball championship. And I'm sure Homer's nacho hat helped Springfield win the Big Pigskin Classic. Although when it comes to Little League championships, Bart didn't fare quite as well, repeatedly. But at least they were sporting enough to give him those extra tries. We know that Shelbyville also has its own nuclear power plant, helmed by the great Aristotle Amidopoulos. We also know it is prone to meltdowns, much like their neighbor. If you want a more stress-free visit to Shelbyville, why not stop by their theater district? There you can see the show Song of Shelbyville, where you can learn they're the birthplace of the buttonfly. Or you can buy candy-colored poison at Pest Buy. If you're into healing crystals, thanks to Marge, they once had competing kiosks at the mall. Even some notable characters originated from Shelbyville. Luann Van Houten is from there, as much as it tears Kirk up inside. And Sarah Wiggum met her husband there when she was working as a thief. As many differences they have, the two cities are surprisingly close. If they weren't, there wouldn't be so many Springfield doppelgangers roaming around Shelbyville. If you'd like to hear more about this mysterious place, I recently did a whole video discussing Shelbyville's history on the show. Check out the link in the description to hear more. I will warn you, however, you will have to hear about the hundreds and hundreds of children that Homer fathered there. Shelbyville is that kind of place. Thanks for having me on, Lydia. Now back to Springfield.
Springfield's colonial times and the Civil War era. So to imagine how Springfield would have looked at this time is pretty easy. Just take a trip down to Old Springfield Town, which is a district of Springfield where the buildings from Colonial Springfield remain fully intact. It's now a historical site that includes tour guides and other attractions. It's quaint, twee, and educational. Just don't mention the origins of Working Day.
If you want to learn more about Working Day, there are many fine books in our gift shop.
And besides having a holiday to celebrate the bludgeoning of animals, Springfield had an even darker history unsurprisingly linked to Mr. Burns' ancestor, called Colonel Burns. He was a notorious slave owner who lived an elaborate lifestyle off the hardships of his slaves, such as Virgil. However, in 1860, Eliza and Mabel Simpson joined the Underground Railroad to help transport the likes of Virgil to the path of freedom. And when the Civil War broke out, the town fought for the northern states, operating from none other than Fort Springfield. The 20th century in Springfield. It was in the late 1920s when the Itchy and Scratchy shorts were first produced, a gruesome, violent TV show that would remain as popular as ever to this very day. And speaking of fighting, many Springfieldians enlisted for World War II. And so the platoon for the Flying Hellfish was created and led by Abraham Simpson, along with many men whose relatives still reside in Springfield. And it's after this that the town then experienced its very own post-war boom, growing into a thriving industrial hub. This expansion was documented in a newsreel that hailed Springfield as one of America's only 400 fastest growing cities. Half the US sported Springfield galoshes, while the Aquacar factory took the world by storm for 2 whole months. The town's pride was so strong that they literally paved their streets with gold, but sadly this was to be the peak of Springfield's economy. According to the Simpsons Guide to Springfield, the town never fully recovered after the Aquacar was found to explode after 600 miles. So the golden streets were repossessed and sold to the Sultan of Brunei, who melted the gold down to encase one of his elephant herds. The town then regained some joy in the 1960s when the 4-time mayor Hans Moleman balanced out the budget 4 times and boosted morale further with a sweet, sweet anthem that embiggened the hearts of the citizens. Although the song was later exposed to be half of the country's anthem, and so poor Hans Moleman was strapped to a horse and sent galloping into the sunset. Yes, Springfield has certainly been knocked down a few times, but still proves its resilience, largely thanks to Mr. Burns for his wealth and keeping them afloat. His business endeavours made Springfield a real titan of industry, and when his germ warfare lab was attacked by radical protesters, he persevered with the opening of the nuclear power plant. The plant opened in the late 60s, and despite a setback with a nuclear reactor and the disappearance of Wayland Sr., Mr. Burns still managed to radically reduce Springfield's unemployment rate. And apart from a few meltdown scares, mutated fish, and numerous health code violations, the nuclear power plant still remains as strong as ever. The developing landscape and neighbourhoods of Springfield. Now, no one knows exactly where Springfield is located in the US, but wherever it is home to lakes, a beach, mountains, a volcano, and several national parks. And the treacherous desert of West Springfield is 3 times the size of Texas, but even still, it's definitely worth a trip to see the stunning Mount Colmore. And if you're looking for more of a city break, Springfield provides an eclectic mix of neighbourhoods: Little Italy, Chinatown, Bumtown, and the glitz and glamour of Springfield Heights, where you'll be sure to spot some Springfield A-listers. But there's no greater pleasure than a stroll through the town square, marveling at the statue of Jebediah while mooching around the quaint local businesses, from the Aztec Theatre, Barney's Bolorama, Herman's Military Antiques, and the Android's Dungeon and Baseball Card Shop, just to name a few. And if it's nightlife that you want, then you can't go wrong with a pint of duff at Moe's Tavern, or a dance at La Maison Derrière, or a nice conversation in the League of Extra Horny Gentlemen. But saying this, even if you want to visit these businesses, you might have a hard time actually getting to Springfield, or even finding it on a map, because no one knows where the hell it is. But it might just be because the town is continually on the move, often being picked up and carried on to another location. This is because the sanitation commissioner, i.e. Homer, once got to deal with other cities to dump their trash inside abandoned mines running underneath Springfield. And so the town was soon flooded with garbage, and rather than organise a mass cleanup initiative, Quimby simply turned to plan B, move the entire town 5 miles down the road. And who knows how many times they had to use that plan in the past. The town's reputation and its rebranding. Springfield has been called many names over the years: America's crud bucket, the little town that can't and won't, and even the meanest city in America. But when their botched attempts to enter the Duff Book of World Records resulted in them instead winning the record for America's fattest town, citizens jiggled with pride. But Marge Simpson, she wasn't as impressed. She wanted change, initiating a war on sugar, and she won. The sweet stuff was banned from Springfield until a smuggling operation prompted Judge Snyder to concede his sugar ban was wildly out of line, and soon their sea was literally filled with sugar.
Hey, I found some pearls! Oh wait, they're just my teeth.
Now, Springfield can't decide whether it's progressive or incredibly backwards. When they were accused of being anti-American, Springfield hastily rebranded itself Libertyville, where everything cost $17.76.
I can't afford to sell a West Side home for that.
They promoted civil rights and even boosted tourism by legalizing same-sex marriage in 2005. But then they also banned evolution in favour of creationism the following year. And a lot of these questionable decisions were decided by the town's mayor Quimby, who is as incompetent and corrupt as politicians come. Well. But Springfield just can't seem to find a better option, as Quimby was briefly replaced by homicidal maniac Sideshow Bob until he was imprisoned for electoral fraud. Next to take his position was Springfield's chapter of Mensa, but their conflicting egos quickly got in the way. Marge Simpson also had a go briefly, but all roads eventually pointed back to Quimby as mayor. At the end of the day, who else but Diamond Joe Quimby is willing to roll up his sleeves and sit down with the mafia? Admittedly, he once used the city's treasury to fund the murder of his enemies, but he is still quite the charmer.
I'm a bad little boy.
Failed endeavours. For all of Springfield's ingenuity and know-how, they can't avoid being duped on by con artists from time to time. When Mr. Burns was fined $3 million for the reckless disposal of toxic waste, conman Laolani employed a catchy song and played on Springfield's rivalry of Shelbyville to convince them into buying one of his monorails.
We're twice as smart as the people of Shelbyville. Just tell us your idea and we'll vote for it.
But by the time they realised he cut costs everywhere, it was almost too late to put the brakes on its disastrous maiden voyage. The town suffered a few blows, including the birthplace of Jebediah Springfield, but Homer Simpson managed to save the day just in time, with his cunning use of a makeshift anchor and a giant donut. And so Springfield learned to never again dive into a foolish endeavour. And sure, there was the popsicle stick skyscraper, but it did seem like a good idea at the time. And the 50-foot magnifying glass, well, how were they supposed to know it was dangerous? And well, the escalator to nowhere, well, yeah, alright, that was pretty dumb. Springfield and its pollution. While yes, it's true that Springfield is perhaps the most toxic town, its pollution did actually help save the town from being destroyed. When Bart Simpson discovered a comet that was hurtling towards Springfield, Professor Frink was tasked with designing a rocket to intercept the comet. The mission failed and instead blew up the only bridge out of town. But by a miracle, the comet burnt up in the Earth's polluted atmosphere, and Springfield was saved by the very pollution environmentalists have protested against.
Let's go burn down the observatory so this'll never happen again.
And although their pollution saved them on that day, it did almost lead to their fall and complete destruction, as the townspeople found themselves under another threat, not from a comet, but the EPA. When an overflowing pig crap silo polluted Lake Springfield to a critical level, the Environmental Protection Agency had to intervene. Spearheaded by government official turned supervillain Russ Cargill, Springfield was imprisoned under a giant glass dome. And after 93 straight days under the dome, Springfieldians struggled to hold onto their sanity. And determined to keep their imprisonment a secret, Cargill planned to blow up the town and label the crater the new Grand Canyon. But eventually the dome was shattered thanks to the Simpsons. But despite their success, the town still suffered considerable disrepair and was shown being rebuilt by the Burns Construction Company at the very start of the 19th season. And it seems that that's probably a good place to end the video, the most monumental thing to ever happen to Springfield. So I'm going to ask you again, if you ever visited Springfield, where would you like to go first? Let me know in the comments, let's have a chat about it, and please subscribe to the channel.